And then lastly, this question comes from Tristan, and I have a feeling we might be in agreement on at least half the answer, but we'll see. What player surprised you most at the weekend at the Circus Tavern in the World Seniors Championship, and what would you nominate as the checkout of the tournament?
Oh, yeah, another good one. A player that surprised me the most, I've got to go with Mark Durbridge for that, because he finished up fifth in the overall tournament averages, 88.74. His first 9 average was the third best of everyone in the tournament, 97.06. He made the quarterfinals on his debut, and I remember watching his walk on Friday night against Glen Durrant, and him walking past, and I had to check on my phone his Wikipedia page to see if he was 50, but turned 50 in January, only 4 weeks ago, and a former world finalist, a former match play finalist, and when he dropped off the tour, won a couple of challenge tours in 2017 that got him back on the tour. And since he lost his tour card, we've not seen much of him in recent years. We know he still plays at a local level. I think he's been on the Modus League at one point as well, but watching his throw on Friday night, or Q action as I like to call it now, it was lovely to watch, and he beat Glen Durrant in straight sets. And as I mentioned off air, nice to have a brief chat with Glenn after the game. He had some nice words to say about our show, and we appreciate that, Glenn. But with Mark Durbridge, from that first game, he looked like someone that could go on a deep run, and he got past Terry Jenkins 3-1 in the second round. Him and Kevin Painter served up a really entertaining quarterfinal, finished up 9-all in legs, but 3-1 in sets to Kevin Painter, who after losing that first set 3-0, won the next 3 sets all 3-2. And yeah, Mark Durbridge, someone that I wasn't really sure what we were going to see from him in the World Seniors, but just from that weekend alone, he's someone that if he carries on, he's going to be a threat for these titles, I think. And as far as checkouts, John Park's 129 when he wanted 119. You've got Robert Thornton taking out 72 when he wanted 92. Those miscounts, they've got to be up there. But no, there were some brilliant checkouts all week, and I must admit I missed the play on Saturday, but on the Sunday, Kevin Painter, he could have had a highlight reel of his own. He had a 151, a 167, a 134. Leonard Gates, he had a skin-saving 146 in his semi-final against Richie Housen, and Richie in that final, as we mentioned earlier, the 161 after getting the 180. But let's not forget the 96 finish that Ko Stompe had in the first leg of the last set with John Park in the first round. When that went in, I was starting to believe we might see the crane, but then John Park went and won the next 3 legs after that. But I think one of the main takeaways from this year's seniors is just the number of big checkouts that we saw during the event. We had Peter Manley with a 161, Les Wallace a 142, Roland Shelton the 131, and Keith Deller a 101 at a crucial time in that first round game against Mike Huntley. Locked at 4 legs all in the deciding set. We'd just seen Mike miss a few darts to hold for 5-4, and the 101, Keith gets it to break for 5-4, then holds to avoid that tie break. That's got to be up there, but plenty of big checkouts, and I think that's the thing that I'm going to remember the most from this year's World Seniors.
Well, you did mention the one I was going to say for the best checkout. It was Peter Manley's 161, just because, well, I mean, who doesn't love Peter Manley, and who doesn't love Peter Manley getting a 161, especially when, he's obviously not at his best. He's one of those players who was there to put bums in seats, like I said earlier in the show, but at least for 3 darts, he looked every bit the player that, well, once won the Las Vegas Desert Classic and made 3 world finals. Yes, it was only 3 darts, and that's why he went out convincingly in the first round. But it was, I think, the checkout of the tournament, just for the fact that it was Peter Manley. But, there were some other really good ones. You mentioned that 146 from Leonard Gates. Had Gates come back in that match from that point and won, I think that would have been the checkout of the tournament, because it did look like it might be that turning point, because in the next leg against the darts, seemed like he was going to turn it around. He had a 180 in his second visit that leg, and I think his mistake was he went for the 1-2-4 to level the set when Richie Housen was back just under 300 at that point, and then he proceeded to miss 7 more darts at double, and that was what was his undoing in that match. His finishing throughout the tournament was really good, but in that semifinal, that was his undoing, and going for that bull on the 1-2-4. The next leg was the difference, but had he won that leg, and assuming he had held to force the deciding set, anything would have been possible. And had he won that match, I think that 146 would have been the checkout of the tournament, especially if he went on to win the title. But Gates had some other really good checkouts. You mentioned a slew of ton-plus finishes. You didn't mention his his ton plus finishes to complete the first set comeback against Martin Adams in the second round, the 101 with Adams waiting on 32 after 12 darts, the 107 in the next leg, in the deciding leg of the set, with Martin Adams waiting on tops. Those were two really, really key checkouts to complete 15-yarders to win, to save, and then to win the set. And he later had a 1-2-2 that he didn't need to have in the final set of the match. But those two big, that 107, that 101, if those didn't go, we probably weren't talking at all about Leonard Gates this weekend, because Adams would have won that set, and maybe Adams would have ended up running away with that match. We know he's a really good front runner, unless he gets up 6-0 in a world final. I think those were also really big checkouts from Gates, but you mentioned a bunch of the other really big ones. As far as who surprised me most, well, I think we had the same person. I was wrong on which half we would agree on for this question, but I think we'll have to agree for Mark Dudbridge. Just really consistent across the three matches and just really good. And his timing was a little off against Kevin Painter, and that ended up being the difference in that quarterfinal. That match easily could have been 3-1 the other way, but for a first appearance in the World Seniors, it was a very, very good showing from Flash, and something to build on entering other TB events. And he certainly will be one of the favorites to win through that qualifier for the Champion of Champions next month. And the way he played, if he gets through that, I would pick him to beat Phil Taylor. I'd pick him to have every chance in any tournament going forward the rest of the year, assuming he builds off this, and I think he will.